The eclipse took place on the 8th of April. We're going to talk today about what unfolded at the eclipse. That eclipse was a showdown. And we're going to unpack what took place in that showdown. It was a showdown ultimately between three groups of beings. Some of them on planet, some of them off planet. We're going to talk about who the three groups of beings were, and what that showdown was all about was control of the timeline. But there's a group of people who we need to address first. They may be a group of people that you know very well. You'll probably interact with them in the comment section. You've probably seen them on the streets, and maybe they're even sitting at your dinner table tonight. The group of people who I'm referring to are the group of people going, "Oh, what are you smoking?" Because nothing's going on. This is normal. The world is normal. This is just another eclipse. This is just another day. This is just no big deal. You keep saying it's the end of the world. Ha ha ha. No such thing. See, look, fireworks in the sky. I don't see it. So what you're dealing with there are a group of people who, number one, don't have the eyes to see, at least not yet. Don't have the heart to feel, at least not yet, beyond what their eyes can see. That's where they're bound to. They're in a limitation. They're ultimately in the prison of the false matrix, wherein all that they can see and feel and interact with has to be physical. Otherwise, it's not a part of their reality. They cannot even entertain it. Remember the two-world split. I've spoken about this before. I've got a video up about this where I explained to you that within the timeline that we're in right now, we have a group of people who are evolving into 5D. And that's people like you. And because you're evolving into 5D, you start to develop the eyes to see, the heart to feel, beyond the prison of the false matrix. In other words, beyond the superficial. And so you can begin to feel, but there is something going on. We are in the end times. These are the end of days. That becomes so painfully obvious to you. But the group of people who can't yet see it, don't argue with them. Just respect. That's the reality that you're in. We are undergoing a two-world split where we have a faction of people going into a 5D reality, a faction of people that are gearing to move into a 4D reality, which is basically like the 3D world that we know, just a little bit more of an elevated version, a little bit less of a manipulated version, allowing for easier transition into 5D. That two-world split takes place at the ascension point. Christians call that the rapture, by the way. Ascension is nothing new. Ascension was called by many different names, the harvest. It was known by many ancient peoples long before Christianity or any religion ever was. The mythologies of an end times existed because our world has seen them before, because ascension is a cyclical event. This ascension, however, is no ordinary ascension. This is where we're lifting up not just the entire timeline, but all false matrices are coming to a potential closure, a potential ending of the false matrix, wherein humanity is so disassociated, so disconnected from their truth that they become like that group of people who I spoke about earlier. Nothing's going on. I can't see anything. You know, they're the people who you could put God right in front of them and they would say, "Who are you? Who are you trying to be? You're not God. God doesn't exist." They would argue even if their eyes could see it, because they cannot liberate themselves from the constriction and the restriction of the false matrix. It doesn't make them bad. It doesn't make them wrong. It doesn't make them any less. It's just what they're playing out. That's part of their experience. They came here for this, so don't deprive them of it and don't judge them for it. A lot of people are transitioning into 5D. A lot more people than we anticipate are going to be moving into that 5D split. But as that happens, there could be a group that gets stuck out here looking like they're not going to evolve. Just leave them be. So let's get back to the showdown on the 8th of April, that great eclipse event. What actually took place? A vying for dominance of the timeline. There was a very big attempted hijacking of that timeline. If we look at the two primary parties involved in that ordeal of dominance. And it was an ordeal because the ordeal was these are two factions who've been really looking for dominance over the timeline. The one is a faction very easy to identify. We call them darkness. This group of people, they are very demonic in nature, and they're looking for a bolstering of more demonic energy to come in much the same way that Christians will talk about the second coming, or they'll talk about the return of the Messiah. They'll talk from the perspective of darkness about the return of the Dark Lord. So what they're doing is they're trying to usher in force into place the end time prophecies in order to force into place almost an overlay into the timeline wherein they can catapult the timeline into the end times so that they're forcing an event, that's their plan at least, forcing an event into place that is going to call the Dark Lords, plural, back into reality. So they're looking for a little bit of a bolstering. That's what darkness is doing, because darkness is very outnumbered. But then there is also a faction upon the planet who has also been working very, very hard to gain leverage over darkness. In other words, competition. You know the deal. Good and evil, darkness and light. It is that age-old split, the yin and the yang, right? So where we had a dark faction vying for dominance, trying to take the timeline over, we also had a group of beings, and these group of beings might be very conservative, traditional, religious in nature, and this group of beings, they're trying to bring in exactly the same thing, but they're looking for the epiphany of light and love and beauty and the homecoming of God, the return of light on planet Earth. These are the two primary participants in dominance of the timeline, each one looking for their respective leader to come back. But then, as always, light becomes the anomaly. Light becomes the unpredictable ripple that can never be calculated. And that's exactly what took place right here on the 8th of April at the Eclipse event. There were a group of people upon this planet, a group of beings, some of them, so when I say people, some of them very much on planet and some of them very much non-physical beings who come from the galactic realms to support what's taking place right here on planet Earth. This group of people, they're known quite simply as the lightworkers. These are people who are working in elevated states of consciousness. These are the people who are moving into a 5D timeline. These people weren't, this is the amazing part, actively looking for dominance of the timeline, because that's not their deal. They don't want dominance. They only want to step into inner alignment, inner power, inner sovereignty. It's a very personal process, but here is where the miracle took place. When we have enough people on the planet stepping into unity within themselves as individuals, and they stop trying to unify the world out there, they start unifying the world in here, that's when someone becomes impactful. And it so happens that we have a vast multitude of people like that on the planet right now, and they start rippling and they don't even know it. They don't even know that their ripple begins to bring other like-minded ripples into a collective cohesive energy field, and it begins to operate and vibrate at a frequency that surpasses any of those yin and yang, dark and light, day and night forces that were looking for dominance over the timeline. And it doesn't matter, you could go into the semantics of which one is right and which one is wrong. Is it darkness or is it light that we want to win? But there was this third group of people who said, this is not about the winners. This is not about someone else leading humanity. This is about humanity stepping into their rightful place of inner unification, just operating as the individual, not wanting to change anybody else, but taking such a level of personal power, personal responsibility that they just sat in that. One of the questions I got asked so much just around the eclipse was, what must I do, Kerry, at the eclipse? Must I meditate? Must I stay inside? Must I whatever? And I said to everyone, just do what you're called to do. We're beyond giving our power away to teachers, saying, you must tell me where I must go. You, Kerry, or you, someone else, you must tell me what to do. The light workers said, I'm not even asking. I'm being. That's what whether I'm inside or outside, looking at the eclipse or looking at the mirror, I'm being. And this group of beings performed a miracle without even trying, without even knowing. And I can tell you that before the eclipse, this was obvious. Do you remember I put up a video, I'm sure many of you watched it, about the eclipse, and I said, don't worry, we've got nothing to worry about. I put up, maybe 3 or 4 videos on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook, just very short videos, one of them being a little energy activation, just a little bit of a silent inner connection meditation on the eclipse. And I put up just my growing thoughts about the eclipse as we got closer and closer to it. And boy, did I encounter those 2 factions, right? Did I encounter those 2 factions of people vying for dominance over the timeline. And of course, that group of people that I spoke about saying, oh, you're smoking your socks, nothing's going on here. But I noticed the light workers, very busy there, very busy inside themselves, becoming more whole, kind of like going, you guys fight it out amongst yourselves. I'm stepping into unity here. I've got a job, and my job is to step into unity right here. The moment you stop trying to change the world, you change the world. The moment you stop trying to convince people, you become an irrepressible ripple that won't convince people. It will show people what light is. It will remind people, it will switch them on without them even knowing that they're being switched on to a higher gear. So this is what took place. This is why I kept saying, we've got nothing to worry about. We can look at the agendas of control for the timeline or the wish for dominance. We can look at those agendas. We can just see them. We can just see them and go, look at that. That's all that is. But not succumb to fear and not support a team. I'm going to choose a side, because what is that? That is inner division. Our job has become much bigger as light workers. Our job has become much bigger, far beyond the split of day and night. In other words, of darkness and light. It is really about unity. It's about taking the yin and the yang and making it one thing. It's about bringing cohesion and unity and oneness within the individuals. And when individuals do that, they don't know, but they do it collectively, and that collective becomes a ripple, and you were a part of that ripple, whether it was in a teeny tiny little weeny whiny way or it was massive. Every single one of you played a part. So now that we've unpacked what took place, you might say, well, what becomes of those players? What becomes of them now? Well, now the timeline lifts up. This is not what they were necessarily looking for. The timeline lifts up now, where those agendas can no longer play out. And maybe one day I'll talk to you a little bit more about the light agenda, because it's pretty easy. It's almost straightforward and clean cut to look at the dark agenda. Oh, right. The dark agenda was to bring more demons into the planet. That's really it. They were looking to create a hole, a tear in space-time to bring more demons in. So that becomes a very understandable scenario. But what becomes a little bit more nuanced is when we look at light, because we think of light as one thing only, but it's not. Light is a multi-layered thing. At the highest level, light is unification. That's at the highest level. But at the lower levels of light, light still wants to be right. And it wants separation from darkness. It wants to boot darkness out and say, you're the bad guys. We don't want to, oh, you stink. We don't want to be around the baddies. Baddies must go and sit there in the corner or go get invisible, or I don't know, just somehow their existence should be denied. So we get light at the lower levels. So when I talk to you about the war, so to speak, the spiritual war between dark and light, it's that. It's that group of people who hold light, but at the lowest level of light. So now do you understand what I'm saying? That what took place was a quantum ripple, a quantum leap without it being planned. This is the beauty of operating at the highest possible light at the highest possible octave, you will have things happen in your reality. You will probably call it, synchronicity. Oh, look at the synchronicity. It's much bigger than synchronicity. It is a divine harmony orchestrated at the highest level, at the soul level, at the God level even. It is that synchronicity that's going to play out that you're going to be witness to. You're going to say, I can't believe I was at the right place at the right time, saying the right thing, doing the right whatever. And that just is going to cause quantum ripple that you can't calculate. Why? Because this is incalculable. This is where we're operating in the quantum realm. So some might say, oh, this is trust. This is operating at a level of deep trust. Yes, but it's trust in your light, which is what? What is that? When I talk about your light, that is your direct connection to God. It is trusting that. See, there's confusion that people sometimes get caught up in. They say, but Kerry, how can you be a spiritual teacher? Because you're always saying, I must trust my light. Yes. My job, my role as a spiritual teacher is to lead you to your light. My role as a spiritual teacher is to help you remember the beauty and the magnificence and the divinity of who you are, to show you, there's illusion. See, sometimes you need to see the illusion, not be afraid of it, but actually say, there's the illusion, there's the truth. That's what I'm doing. I'm supporting you and supporting whoever truly wants to be supported in being able to access higher levels of their own consciousness. Join the Plasma Light Tribe. That's my online community where I truly teach at a very, very deep and profound level, far beyond what I can offer you here on YouTube or any social media platform. That's available on my website, kerryk.com. Let's end in love. Feel it. Take the time to feel and get real, to step deeply into your authenticity. The eclipse has happened. A showdown showed down. Light workers stepped into their rightful role as the highest frequency on the planet, in their intention, willingness, and desire to lead their own lives. They've established themselves as a collective group upon planet Earth that is not leading the human beings, but leading the timeline. So what this means is they're leading by energetic example. Feel the enormity and the beauty and the power and the resonance of that. To let light, unified light, lead by example through humanity, a supported humanity. Light workers lead the timeline now. Ripples of light come through these final words that I'm sharing with you, so let them in. All that they're doing is they're activating the light within you that you've always been, but didn't quite know that you had permission to be more fully, more freely, more now. That's the invitation. The invitation is be more you now. From my heart, all the way into yours. I do hope you feel it. And let it hold you and love you and support you. Please do me a favor, like the video, that always helps. Bye-bye for now.